face my colleagues, 26 pairs of eyes avoiding mine, except Adeline's. She met my gaze with a practiced smile of professional concern, as if she'd done me a favor. The quarterly projections I'd spent 3 sleepless nights perfecting suddenly seemed meaningless as heat crawled up my neck. Since we're discussing team roles, our department head Rowan nodded. Perhaps Nora should focus on what she does best. Data compilation. Adeline, you'll take point on the Silver Fern presentation next week. I watched my creation, my brainchild, transfer ownership in less than 30 seconds. Adeline's fingers were already reaching for my notes as a strange calm washed over me. That day, I made a decision. I wouldn't shout or cry or quit dramatically. No, I would do what I've always done best. Observe, analyze, and wait for the perfect moment to act. 3 months later, when our CEO walked into that same conference room with me at his side and announced, "Meet your new division head," I savored every millisecond of Adeline's face as it transformed from confusion to horror. But that was just the beginning. When I unveiled my first decision, nobody was prepared for what happened next. Before I tell you what I did to change everything in our company forever, I need you to understand my complete story. Listen until the end because what happened wasn't just about professional revenge. It was about dismantling a system that crushes quiet brilliance while rewarding the loudest voices in the room. My name is Nora Vestergaard. I'm 32 years old with a double master's in statistical analysis and organizational psychology. People who know me professionally use words like methodical, brilliant, and reliable. Those who know me personally, well, there aren't many. And that's by design. I wasn't born with social anxiety. As a child, I was curious and outspoken, raising my hand first in class, leading playground games. My parents, both academic researchers, encouraged questions at dinner and celebrated my perfect grades with quiet pride. Home was a sanctuary of logical discussion and respectful debate. Then came the 7th grade science fair. My project on bacterial growth patterns won first place, sending me to the state competition. Standing on that auditorium stage, beneath harsh lights with hundreds of eyes on me, something inside me shifted. My throat closed. My palms leaked sweat. My carefully memorized presentation disintegrated into stammered fragments. The judge's pity was palpable. That moment rewired something in my brain. Suddenly, being seen meant being vulnerable. Being heard meant risking humiliation. I retreated into books, data, and the comforting certainty of numbers that never judged. Despite this, I excelled academically and eventually landed at Quantum Analytics, a mid-sized tech company specializing in business intelligence solutions. For my first 4 years, I worked in research and development as my perfect habitat. Surrounded by fellow data enthusiasts, I thrived behind my dual monitors, developing algorithms that transformed raw information into actionable insights. My anxiety remained but was manageable in that environment. Presentations were straightforward, technical affairs to equally technical colleagues who cared more about functionality than delivery style. Everything changed when I developed PulseTrack, an analytics approach that reduced processing time by 68% while increasing accuracy by 23%. Suddenly, executives knew my name. Marketing wanted to feature me in promotional materials. Clients requested meetings with the genius behind PulseTrack. The company recognized my innovation by promoting me to the Business Solutions Division, a customer-facing department where my technical expertise would add tremendous value. What they didn't consider was how this environment would affect someone like me. That's where I met Adeline Palmer. From the moment I arrived, Adeline seemed fascinated by me. She asked about my methods, my background, my thinking process. Initially, I thought I'd found an ally, someone who appreciated the work behind the algorithms. I shared everything, explaining complex technical concepts in detail, flattered by her interest. Within weeks, I noticed a pattern. Ideas I discussed with Adeline would appear in her presentations, simplified, repackaged, but unmistakably mine. When I tentatively mentioned this during a coffee break, she laughed. "Oh, Nora, that's how business works. Ideas need proper packaging to sell. You're brilliant with the technical stuff, but clients need someone who speaks their language." Her condescension stung, but I retreated rather than confronted. This is where my social anxiety became her greatest weapon and my greatest weakness. In meetings, when I tried to speak, my voice would grow quiet, my words tangling. Adeline developed a habit of helping me. What Nora is trying to say is, let me translate Nora's tech speak. I think what our number whisperer means is, each intervention reinforced the narrative. Nora has the brains, but Adeline has the presence. Nora creates, Adeline communicates. Nora works, Adeline shines. Our department head, Rowan, seemed to accept this dynamic without question. Why wouldn't he? It was convenient. The work got done. The clients were happy. The systems functioned. For 6 months, I watched as my contributions were systematically minimized. When executives visited, I'd mysteriously receive urgent background tasks that required immediate attention. Client meetings would be scheduled during my pre-approved therapy appointments. My research appeared in presentations with attribution to the team, rather than to me specifically. The most painful part? I began to believe I deserved this treatment. Maybe I was too awkward. Maybe client-facing roles weren't for people like me. Maybe my value was limited to behind-the-scenes work. Then came the Silver Fern project, an opportunity to revolutionize inventory management for a major retail chain. For weeks, I developed a custom algorithm that could predict supply chain disruptions before they occurred. I created visualization tools that made complex data accessible at a glance. I built something revolutionary. The morning of our team's internal review, the weekly huddle where Adeline announced I was too awkward for client meetings, was supposed to be my moment to at least present my work to my peers. Instead, it became my public humiliation. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by empty tea mugs, staring at my computer screen. But instead of working on the project that had just been taken from me, I opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, meeting. Column C, my contribution. Column D, who received credit. Column E, outcome. I started with that day and worked backward, documenting every instance over the past 6 months. The pattern was undeniable. The data told a story more compelling than any emotional outburst could. Then I added more columns. Column F, company benefit from my contribution. Column G, estimated revenue impact. Column H, innovation opportunity cost when my ideas were delayed or diluted. By 3 a.m., I had created something unexpected, an organizational efficiency analysis showing how inclusion patterns affected innovation outcomes. The data revealed that when diverse voices, particularly quieter ones, were included in decision-making, project success rates increased by 42%. When ideas were attributed properly, innovation accelerated. I wasn't just documenting my personal grievances. I was exposing a systemic issue that cost the company millions in missed opportunities. 2 weeks later, working late again, I heard footsteps in the otherwise empty office. Looking up, I saw our CEO, Elliot, standing by my desk, eyes fixed on my monitor. "That's an interesting visualization," he said. "What am I looking at?" Time stopped. My heart hammered. The CEO was speaking to me directly for the first time since my onboarding 3 years ago. The familiar tightness gripped my throat. But something else happened simultaneously, a calm certainty that this moment mattered more than my fear. "It's an organizational efficiency analysis," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "I'm tracking how inclusion patterns affect innovation outcomes." To my surprise, he pulled up a chair. "Show me." For the next hour, I explained my project. With each minute, my voice grew stronger. The data was my shield, the analysis my sword. I wasn't talking about myself. I was presenting evidence. This shows that when contributions are properly attributed, team members are 87% more likely to bring forward additional innovations in the following quarter, I explained, pointing to a particularly telling graph. But when credit is consistently misattributed, innovation from those team members drops by 64% within 6 months. Elliot's eyes narrowed. And these red points? Those represent instances where ideas were presented by someone other than their originator. resulting in implementation delays averaging 4.6 weeks due to communication gaps. He was silent for a long moment. You've been tracking this across the entire business solutions division? Yes. Including your own experiences? I hesitated, then nodded. I'm data point 37. He leaned back, studying me with new interest. Nora, right? From RD originally? Yes, sir. The Pulse Track developer. One of the developers. I corrected, automatically, then flinched at my audacity. But Elliot smiled. No, I read the original patent application. It was primarily your work. He stood up. I'd like to continue this conversation. Are you free tomorrow morning? My office, 8 a.m.? After he left, I sat motionless, barely breathing. What had I just done? The following weeks were surreal. My mornings began with private meetings with Elliot, discussing my analysis and broader organizational insights. My days continued with the same exclusion from Adeline and the team. The contrast was jarring. Adeline noticed my morning absences and the occasional email from Elliot's assistant. Her approach shifted subtly. She began including me in smaller meetings, asking for my input, always when others were watching. But in private, her message was clear. It's cute that Elliot's taken an interest in your little project, she said one afternoon, cornering me in the break room. But don't forget, executives love to feel smart by discovering hidden talent. Once the novelty wears off, things return to normal. Just remember who actually runs this department day to day. She wasn't wrong about her informal power. Despite Rowan's title as department head, Adeline controlled information flow, project assignments, and client relationships. She'd cultivated an inner circle of team members who benefited from her favor and feared her disapproval. Meanwhile, my conversations with Elliot expanded beyond my original analysis. He asked about PulseTrack's potential applications for customer behavior prediction. He inquired about my thoughts on the company's 5-year technology roadmap. He listened when I spoke, really listened, without interrupting or translating. During one such meeting, after I'd explained how our current project management structure created unnecessary bottlenecks, he asked an unexpected question. If you were running business solutions, what would you change first? The question startled me. I'm not qualified to. Humor me, he said, hypothetically. So I told him about blind project reviews, where ideas would be evaluated without knowing their source, about balanced representation in client meetings, about performance metrics that rewarded collaboration rather than showmanship. Interesting, he said when I finished. Very interesting. 2 days later, Adeline escalated her campaign. During our weekly huddle, as I attempted to present updated analytics from the Silverfern project, she interrupted. Let's be honest about something, she announced to the room. Some people are workhorses, others are show horses. Both have value, but everyone needs to know their place. Her eyes locked with mine. Nora, your quarterly analysis is excellent as always, but perhaps we should have Tegan present these findings to the client tomorrow. Your strengths are clearly in preparation, not presentation. The room grew uncomfortable. A few people shifted in their seats. Others studied their notepads intently. Actually, I said, my voice barely audible, I'd like to present my own findings. The silence that followed was deafening. Adeline recovered quickly. I admire your enthusiasm, but client relationships are delicate. The Silverfern executives are expecting polished communication. Let's not risk the account with experimentation. Rowan, as usual, sided with Adeline. Nora, your contribution is noted and valued. Tegan, please work with Nora to ensure you understand the data thoroughly before tomorrow's presentation. That night, I emailed Elliot a meeting request. The subject line read simply, ready. 3 days later came the moment that changed everything. Our weekly huddle began normally. Adeline was reviewing the quarterly targets, emphasizing how her recent client presentation had secured additional funding. Rowan was nodding appreciatively. The usual suspects were making the usual supportive comments. Then the conference room door opened, and Elliot walked in. Conversations halted mid-sentence. He never attended department huddles. I stood beside him, hands clasped to stop their trembling. Good morning, Elliot said cheerfully. Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to personally deliver some news. He gestured toward me. Effective immediately, I'm appointing Nora Vestergaard as the new head of the Business Solutions Division. The silence was absolute. 26 faces registered various combinations of shock, confusion, and disbelief. Adeline's expression cycled through emotions so rapidly it was like watching a time-lapse video of weather patterns, sunny to stormy in seconds. But, Rowan began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. Rowan, I appreciate your service. Elliot continued smoothly. We're creating a new position for you in strategic development that leverages your experience while providing fresh challenges. My assistant will schedule time to discuss details. He turned to me. The floor is yours, Division Head Vestergaard. With that, he left, closing the door behind him. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click the bell icon for notifications about new stories of workplace transformation and quiet revenge. Trust me, what happens next changes everything about how power works in modern offices. For several excruciating seconds, I stood frozen at the front of the conference room. The weight of 26 stares pressed against me like physical pressure. My throat constricted. My palms dampened. This was exactly the situation that triggered my worst anxiety. All attention focused on me, expectations mounting, judgment imminent. I caught Adeline's eye. Her shock had transformed into something harder, a calculating look that assessed and dismissed me simultaneously. Her lips curved into a slight smirk that communicated one clear message: you won't last a week. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. My anxiety wasn't going to magically disappear because my title had changed. The difference was that now I had the power to design systems that didn't punish people for how their brains worked. Thank you all for your patience, I began, my voice quieter than I would have liked but steady. I know this comes as a surprise. That's an understatement, Adeline interjected with a brittle laugh. Congratulations, Nora. What an unexpected development. The emphasis on unexpected rang through the room, her way of suggesting I hadn't earned this position. I took a deep breath. As division head, I'll be implementing several structural changes to our workflows and evaluation systems. These changes will take effect immediately. Adeline's smile tightened. Perhaps we should discuss transition timelines first? I'm in the middle of several sensitive client relationships that require a particular touch. I'm familiar with all active accounts, I replied, forcing myself to maintain eye contact despite the discomfort it caused. I've been analyzing their data for months. Data isn't the same as relationship management, she countered. Clients don't respond to spreadsheets, they respond to people they trust. Several heads nodded around the table. This was the narrative Adeline had carefully cultivated. That technical skill was somehow separate from real business value. Which brings me to my first announcement. I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Effective immediately, we're implementing blind project reviews. All proposals will be submitted anonymously and evaluated purely on merit. Confused glances circulated around the table. Anonymous how? Asked Tegan, Adeline's closest ally. Project proposals will be submitted through a new digital portal that strips identifying information before review. Ideas will succeed based on substance, not source. Emmett leaned forward. But context matters. Who proposes an idea is part of evaluating its feasibility. Is it? I asked. Or does that just entrench bias? Our data shows that ideas from the same 5 people are consistently prioritized regardless of quality, while suggestions from 13 team members haven't received serious consideration in over 8 months. This statement caused a ripple of discomfort. Those 13 pairs of eyes widened slightly. They knew exactly who they were. My second change. Client meetings will now require balanced representation from both research and presentation teams, with speaking roles for both. That's not practical, Adeline cut in sharply. You can't force people who aren't comfortable presenting to. I'm not forcing anyone, I interrupted, surprising even myself with my firmness. I'm creating opportunity for those who've been systematically excluded. There's a difference between being uncomfortable and being unwelcome. A slight murmur rose from the far end of the table. where the quieter analysts typically sat. And finally, I continued, performance bonuses will now tie directly to how many team members contributed to successful projects, not just who presented them. Collaboration becomes profitable, not just performative. The silence that followed felt electric. I had just dismantled the power structure that Adeline had carefully built over years, a system where controlling access to clients meant controlling careers. "Does anyone have questions?" I asked. 25 people stared at their notepads. Only Adeline met my gaze. "Just one," she said, her voice silky with warning. "What makes you think you can handle this role when you can barely speak in front of a room?" The question landed exactly as she intended, a public reminder of my greatest vulnerability, designed to undermine my authority before it solidified. "An excellent question," I acknowledged, feeling my heart rate accelerate. Leadership isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who listens most effectively, analyzes most thoroughly, and creates systems where everyone can contribute optimally. I gestured to the analytics displayed on the wall screen, data I'd prepared knowing this moment might come. According to our own performance metrics, teams with diverse communication styles outperform homogeneous groups by 34%. My so-called awkwardness isn't a liability, it's a different perspective, and this division needs different perspectives. I ended the meeting by distributing digital packets outlining the new systems in detail. We'll reconvene tomorrow to discuss implementation. In the meantime, I'm available for individual conversations about how these changes affect your specific roles. As people filed out, their expressions ranged from skeptical to cautiously hopeful. Only Adeline remained seated, tapping her finger against her coffee cup. When we were alone, she spoke quietly. "Clever performance, but we both know what's happening here. Elliot's using you to shake things up. Then he'll replace you with someone who can actually lead once the disruption's done its job." "Perhaps," I admitted, "but these changes will remain regardless of who sits in this chair." "You really believe that?" Her laugh was almost pitying. "Systems don't have power, Nora. People do, and you've just made enemies of the wrong people." As she left, her words echoed in my mind. She wasn't entirely wrong. Systems only worked when people implemented them faithfully. And I had just overturned years of carefully cultivated relationships and unwritten rules. The following weeks tested every ounce of my resolve. The resistance came in many forms. First came the procedural stonewalling. Reports that should have taken hours suddenly required days. Data that had always been accessible became mysteriously corrupted. The blind review portal experienced technical difficulties that delayed project evaluations. Then came the social isolation. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Lunch invitations extended to everyone except me. Even team members who benefited from the new systems kept their distance, afraid of being associated with the division's controversial new head. Most challenging was the client sabotage. Adeline began contacting clients directly, circumventing proper channels to suggest that recent management changes might affect project quality. Several clients requested calls to discuss concerns about timeline impacts. I had anticipated resistance, but the reality still stung. Each night, I returned to my apartment exhausted, questioning whether I had made a terrible mistake. My anxiety, always simmering beneath the surface, threatened to boil over completely. But I had one advantage Adeline hadn't considered. Data doesn't lie. While the social battleground proved challenging, the blind review system began producing undeniable results. Projects moved forward faster, without the politics of whose idea deserved priority. Ideas that would have been dismissed found champions based on merit. Team members who had been silent for months began contributing innovative solutions. During the third week, something unexpected happened during the Silver Fern client call. Preston, a data analyst who typically remained hidden behind his screens, presented his section of the quarterly review with quiet competence. When the client asked a particularly challenging question about anomaly detection, Preston provided an explanation so clear and insightful that the client requested he be present at all future meetings. "I've never spoken directly to clients before," Preston told me afterward, voice tinged with disbelief. "Adeline always said my communication style was too technical." Your communication style is exactly what that particular client needed, I replied. Different audiences require different approaches. That's why diversity in presentation teams matters. Small victories accumulated. The developer team, previously relegated to implementation only, began joining strategy sessions where their technical expertise prevented several potential missteps. Two junior analysts, whose ideas had been consistently overlooked, identified a pattern in the silver fern data that ultimately saved the client millions in inventory costs. By the end of the first month, our division's efficiency metrics showed a 17% improvement. By the end of the second month, that number had risen to 29%. Not everyone was pleased with these results. Adeline and her inner circle continued their resistance, now focusing on narrative control. Lucky coincidences and honeymoon effects became their explanations for our improving numbers. During division meetings, they asked pointed questions designed to highlight my social awkwardness rather than discuss substantive issues. I expected Adeline to eventually adjust to the new reality, but she seemed incapable of adapting. Her power had always derived from controlling access and taking credit, both now impossible under the new systems. Without these tools, she struggled to demonstrate value. The turning point came during our quarterly executive review. Elliot and the leadership team sat at the back of the conference room while I presented our division's performance. Despite my racing heart and occasional stumbled word, the data was compelling. Our efficiency metrics, innovation pipeline, and client satisfaction scores all showed significant improvement. When I finished, Adeline raised her hand. While the numbers are certainly interesting, I think we should acknowledge the strain these changes have placed on team morale and client relationships. Several key accounts have expressed concerns about our new direction. It was a calculated move, suggesting problems with our most valuable assets without providing specifics that could be refuted. Which accounts specifically? Elliot asked. Adeline smiled smoothly. I've had private conversations with several clients who aren't comfortable expressing their concerns formally yet. They value long-standing relationships and don't want to create difficulties. Interesting, I said, pulling up a new slide. Because our client feedback metrics show a 24% increase in satisfaction across all accounts, perhaps we could look at specific client responses? The screen displayed anonymized but date-stamped client feedback forms showing overwhelmingly positive responses to our new collaborative approach. Furthermore, I continued, our employee engagement survey shows that 72% of team members report feeling their contributions are now more valued, compared to 34% 6 months ago. Adeline's expression hardened. Surveys can be manipulated. Real leadership means understanding the unspoken concerns that people won't put in writing. I agree completely, I replied, surprising her, which is why I've been conducting one-on-one conversations with every team member and key client contact over the past 2 months. I nodded to my assistant, who distributed packets containing transcribed feedback themes, with identifying information removed from these conversations. The most consistent theme from these discussions was that people felt previous systems rewarded self-promotion over contribution, resulting in misaligned incentives and wasted potential. Elliot leaned forward. And how have the new systems addressed this concern? By creating multiple pathways for contribution and recognition. Not everyone communicates the same way, but everyone deserves equal opportunity to have their ideas evaluated fairly. After the meeting, Elliot asked me to stay behind. When everyone else had left, he sat beside me rather than across the table. You've exceeded my expectations, Nora, he said simply. Thank you, I replied, unsure what else to say. Not everyone would have had the courage to completely redesign a division's operating model within days of taking leadership. I hesitated before responding. I didn't redesign it for courage's sake. I did it because the previous system was demonstrably inefficient and fundamentally unjust. He smiled. Exactly why you were the right choice. After a pause, he added, Adeline has requested a transfer to the East Coast office. The news shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow it did. When? Effective next week. She says she needs a fresh start where her leadership style will be better appreciated. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, but also a strange emptiness. Adeline had been the catalyst for both my greatest professional humiliation and my unexpected rise to leadership. Her absence would remove a significant source of tension, but it also represented the end of a chapter I hadn't finished processing. "How do you feel about that?" Elliot asked, studying my expression. "Honestly, I never wanted her gone. I just wanted systems where people like her couldn't succeed by diminishing others." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's why these changes will outlast individual personalities, including yours and mine. You've built something sustainable." In the months that followed, our division continued to evolve. The blind review system expanded to include resource allocation and promotion considerations. The balanced representation requirement for client meetings became standard practice across all departments. The collaborative bonus structure was adopted company-wide. Most importantly, the culture slowly transformed. Team members who had been silent began finding their voices, not by becoming extroverts, but by having their contributions valued regardless of delivery style. Those who had relied on self-promotion rather than substance either adapted to merit-based evaluation or, like Adeline, sought environments more hospitable to their approach. 6 months after that fateful huddle where Adeline declared me too awkward for client meetings, I received an email that brought everything full circle. Silverfern, our most prestigious client, was hosting an innovation summit and requested that I deliver the keynote address on The Quiet Revolution: How Inclusive Systems Drive Innovation. As I prepared my presentation, I reflected on how much had changed and how much hadn't. My social anxiety hadn't disappeared. Public speaking still triggered physical symptoms that required management techniques and occasionally medication. I still preferred data analysis to networking events. The difference was that I no longer saw these traits as deficiencies to be hidden. They were simply aspects of who I was, a leader who listened more than spoke, who found patterns others missed, who created spaces where different types of brilliance could flourish. The morning of the summit, I stood backstage, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest as hundreds of industry leaders took their seats in the auditorium. My hands trembled slightly as I reviewed my notes one final time. A text message notification appeared on my phone. It was from Preston, the formerly silent analyst who now led our predictive modeling team. "Remember, they need your perspective, not your performance. We're all better because you stayed authentically you." I walked onto that stage with my anxiety still present but no longer in control. My voice was steady as I began. Innovation doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes, the most revolutionary ideas come from the quietest voices in the room, but only if we build systems that allow those voices to be heard. As I spoke, I scanned the audience and noticed a familiar face in the back row. Adeline sat, watching, her expression unreadable. Our eyes met briefly before I continued my presentation. I felt no anger, no desire for her to witness my triumph. Her presence was simply a reminder of the journey that had brought me here, a journey that had transformed not just my career, but an entire company culture. The most powerful revenge isn't destroying your opponents. It's building something they can't tear down even after you're gone. Have you ever been underestimated at work because of your communication style? Or have you witnessed someone else's brilliance being overlooked because they didn't fit the traditional leadership mold? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more narratives about workplace transformation and the quiet revolutionaries who change organizations from within. Remember, sometimes the most powerful voices aren't the loudest, but the ones that speak truth through action.